because it all starts with a seed. An agricultural transformation is not going to happen unless you have good seeds. The food you are eating today will not be on your table unless there's a good seed. And that's why we are here, because the continent is witnessing the unveiling of a program, an initiative, an institution that's going to ensure that every farmer on the continent is reached by a good seed.
Seed Systems Group believes that every farmer in every village in Africa deserves to have improved climate resilient seed in order to increase their crop yields. And we know that today that is not the case. However, we have a proven model that should allow us to be able to do that. And thanks to the commitment of AGRA, plus the donors of AGRA, principally the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, USAID, and others, we were able to establish about 120 private African seed companies in 15 countries. Today, those companies are producing over 150,000 metric tons of high-yielding seed and selling that to farmers across those countries. What we've seen in response is that the yields in those countries have broadly increased. For the first time in recent memory, crop yields are not declining or holding steady, they're climbing at a steady pace. But if you look at 15 other countries of Africa, where there are 320 million people, approximately 38 million farmers, you'll find that, according to official data, crop yields are basically stagnating. So when we talk about an African green revolution, we're really talking about getting, in the first place, higher yielding seed to these farmers in these countries that have so far been left behind. Our analysis shows that if even only 1/3 of the farmers in those 15 countries could get access to higher yielding seed, they would be able to produce an additional 25 million metric tons, worth about $4 billion on an annual basis. So the payoff for this initiative could be huge. We're going to put the focus on high-yielding, climate-resilient crop varieties. We're going to bring those varieties to these new countries. And then we're going to work with the private sector to develop perhaps another 100 private African seed companies or more to produce the seed, to market the seed, promote the seed to local farmers.
Once foundation seed is available, it gives you a guarantee that the certified seed will also be available to the farmer. The unavailability of the foundation seed will mean exactly that the farmer will not have access to improved technology to plant.
We have commissioned Cornell University to undertake detailed business plan and costing, can come up with a budget for each of the 15 countries that we are targeting that will then enable us to move forward with knowledge and detail and execute a plan. And the plan specifically looks at how do we leverage on the investments that have been done in the past in seed breeding and in research to make sure that we have a situation where in the next phase of these countries we are moving faster than the first phase, because people like Amos already exist. And this technology is already there in other countries, including neighboring countries and research stations. Secondly, we are also going to develop private seed businesses in these countries. You've just had the case of Ghana here. These other countries have nothing. So we don't see why. And we can execute the plan in the neighboring countries if there is support from all the stakeholders. Thirdly, the third element is education and basically capacity building, both for farmers and scientists.
Ensure that our plant breeders are trained here, they have the knowledge and skills to take Africa forward. I believe we can get there, and it's all about indigenous knowledge working in Africa. And of course, capacity development in Africa. My message to Joe going into other countries is we should think about the capacity on the ground. We cannot import blueprints from abroad. We need local solutions to local problems. And I can cite examples of our plant breeders in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger, in, if you like, Nigeria, in Ghana. Now in East Africa, you can go to South Sudan. We have students who have graduated who are working towards developing varieties which will impact productivity. Africa, developing the human capacity to impact Africa. I mean, we have all the knowledge. It's about investments in the value chain. And I believe that if Joe were to adopt this model in Chad, in Mauritania, elsewhere, I believe the food security in Africa will become a reality.
Model takes into account the need to develop not just seed breeders, but also a network of agro-dealers who will do downstream delivery to make sure that we connect with the farmer, who actually is our key focus.
So over the past 2 months, I've traveled to 7 of the countries which are targeted by Seed Systems Group, and it's been an amazing journey. The farmers in these countries are actually cultivating varieties that were developed 50 or 60 years ago. Some of them don't exist in any other part of the world, and their yields are very low. They're cultivating the land. They're planting using proper crop production practices. They're weeding their fields. In some cases, they're also even fertilizing their seeds. But just for lack of the better, higher yielding seed, they're getting a fraction of what they could. And for me, as an agronomist, as a plant breeder, it's actually heartbreaking. I know we can change that system, and I know that these countries will benefit as soon as we start to introduce higher yielding seed and start to produce them at scale. What we talk about at Seed Systems Group is a public-private model for seed supply. And Eric has talked about the education aspect of it. There's also the plant regulatory aspect of it. There's the crop breeding aspect of it on the public side. But really, what we're bringing to this equation is the energy and innovativeness of private sector. So private sector has its own energy. It has its own drive. They don't sleep until the job is done. And that's really what it takes to get seed to the furthest corners of this continent. So far, in these countries, there are virtually no private seed companies operating in that manner. So I think within the next 5 years, if we're able to go and implement this model, we should be able to see at least 50 or 60 companies. Hopefully, we'll be producing close to 20 to 30,000 metric tons.
Find out how affordable are these new seeds that we're rolling out, and are they likely to be one of purchases, or is it purchase that we can use every year? Once the farmer gets it, do they have to buy it the following year?
What we aim for when we're developing a vibrant, competitive seed sector is for seed prices to be somewhere between $1 and $2 equivalent per kilogram for seed. Now, keep in mind, to get started on modern agriculture, a farmer may want to produce only or buy only 2 to 4 kilograms of seed. But with that 2 to 4 kilograms of improved seed, they'll be able to produce enough to purchase enough seed the following year for their entire farm. So for an outlay of perhaps $10 to $20 of seed, one time, a farmer basically takes that first step that gets them to the higher yield. And I also want to emphasize, really, it's not just about the seed. We're not talking about magic seeds here. We're talking about seed that has the capacity to produce 3 to 4 times what their traditional varieties can produce. But the other element is increasing the soil fertility. And the advantage of the new seed is that it responds exponentially more to improved fertility than local varieties.
This program will increase the number of product available, but nowadays Africa have already more than 50% of waste in the total of the food production. So is there any components with this seeds program targeted the markets and all the transformation of the product, because more products will increase maybe the waste of the product. And second point, how to become, and especially thinking about the island where I'm working, it's a tiny island, Sao Tome and Principe, how to become over there a seeds producer and breeder.
A country that could probably really benefit from this kind of an initiative. So we'd be happy to work with Sao Tome and Principe.
I think the entire, if you see what we are developing, we're not just developing about just a seed alone. It's the entire ecosystem of how do you manage an agricultural system efficiently. It includes managing technologies for managing surpluses and managing post-harvest losses, storage infrastructure that makes sure that we have appropriate technology to store, because that's part of the challenges of why losses are happening. We don't have good warehouses and stores to store these crops to the right time for you to be able to sell. So this model addresses all these elements.
Very particular about our farmers, especially if you're looking at the farmers here in Ghana. Majority of them, at least if not 70%, are poor. So talking about this improved seeds, how well are we, or how sure are we that these seeds, farmers are able to purchase them and use them?
These programs that what we are doing is that make sure the seed is close to the farmer. So the farmer doesn't travel a far distance to just buy a kilo or two of the seed. If he can get it in his jurisdiction, then that's the cost. So to me, the issue is not necessarily about expensive seed. It's close to the farmer at the right time, and the quality of the seed is good. The farmer purchases the seed.
What is the communication strategy? Because the challenge has been in Africa, we have this very good technology, very good programs, but uptake is a problem because of how we communicate.
And the private seed companies that we invest in will have every incentive to do the same thing. Some of them get mobile trucks and drive around with announcement loudspeakers at market days. Some of them employ people on motorcycles to go from village to village selling seed. There's all kinds of ways the private sector can find a solution to the lack of awareness from farmers. But in addition to what the private seed companies are going to do, we're going to be distributing millions of these small packs. What is this? This is just 100 grams of hybrid maize seed that a company would like to sell in its area of commerce.